Someone's overheated those brakes. And now he's turned the inside of that drum smooth as glass. The brakes are applying, but it's not giving you any braking power because you lost your friction cohesion inside the drum. So you could either turn that drum or on a lathe, or just take the old one off, put a new one on. So that you get your friction cohesion back inside that drum. I know, I've heated up a set of trailer brakes. Cost me $1,200 that day. Because when I was living and working in BC, I was a contract driver. And on my contract, I state that if I'm driving some guy's truck and I break it, I'll pay for it. That's why I was so popular, because no other contract drivers did that. Yeah. So I was sticking my neck out. Yes. But I remember I was coming down into Summerland, and it was just pouring rain. And in my stupid thought process, I thought if I just, apply trailer brakes, the water splashing up on them is going to cool them off. I was wrong. Because as I was coming down the hill, there was another truck driver going up the hill, and he said, southbound. He says, look over your shoulder. Of course, I couldn't see anything because my tires are kicking up water off the road, right? So I couldn't see the smoke billowing out of my trailer tires, but he did as he was going in the other direction. So when I got close to the bottom of the hill, I stopped out at the tourist turnout there, where the tourist information board was. As soon as I stopped and the water spray died down, I saw the smoke billowing out of my wheels. Yeah. And then I realized I cooked the brakes. So when I brought the trailer back to Glencoe's yard, I fessed up. I said, you know what? And it was a brand new trailer. I just pulled it out of Langley. First trip that trailer was ever on. Yeah. So I was a bit embarrassed that day. And I had to work a week for free to pay Glencoe to do a brake job on that trailer. Because these brake pads had to be taken off and a new drum installed. And once you cook those drums, you'll smell them for months after that. Yeah, they left the drums sitting in the yard, and every time you walk by them, they're sitting on a pallet. You could just smell them. That's how hot I got them. Yeah. So once you cook a brake drum, it's basically recycle. Put a new one up. Yeah, but I had to pay for that cash. Yeah, so I had to dig in the old savings account. Say, geez, Glencoe, I'm sorry. Here, put her in the shop, put new brakes on her. I'm never going to do that again. And I told the guy, the boss, I'm driving this truck with. I said, yeah, Glencoe's not too happy with me right now. Oh, well, here's why. Here they're showing you in this graph here, you guys, what happens when you start losing your braking power. You have to remember, the rod that's in these chambers, right? There's only so much rod inside this chamber that will come out of it. And once you pull all the rod out of that chamber, and you haven't come to a full stop yet, you ain't gonna stop. You're gonna keep rolling. Because you lost your reserve stroke. No matter how hard you step on that brake pedal, you can step on it with both feet, you're still not stopping. Because you lost your reserve stroke. Because your brakes are so badly out of adjustment. And don't forget, when you're hard on the brake pedal, and you're getting this drum hot, metal stretches. When it gets hot, it starts to expand. So the gap in between your liners and your drum starts to open up by thousandths of an inch. And of course, you're wearing off your brake pads too. So that's going to make that gap even open up a few more thousandths of an inch. And when that gap starts to open up, that means you drivers are stepping on the brake pedal more, and more push rod is coming out of the chamber. And you're still not slowing down. And then once you step on the brake pedal and all the rod comes out of that chamber and you haven't stopped, you better be looking for a runaway lane, because you ain't gonna stop. You're gonna have to use a fixed object to bring your vehicle to a stop. Here in this diagram here, they're showing you on a well-adjusted brake, when you initially first step on the brake pedal with well-adjusted brakes, this is where you get the maximum braking power right there. Because very little push rod came out of the chamber. That's probably only about 10-15 pounds of air in that chamber, right? And then as you're rolling along with the brake pedal on for a long stop, to come to your full stop, you're probably stepping on the brake pedal just a little bit harder, throwing some more air into that chamber, but you're making more push rod come out of it. And then come to your full stop, look how much rod's come out of the chamber. This red line represents application power, how much air is going into the chamber. The black line represents push rod travel, how much rod is coming out of the chamber. And it's here, it shows that your pads are not making contact at the inside of the drum yet. So these brakes are in the released position. Now the driver's stepping on the brake pedal. With a well-adjusted brake on a cold brake drum, here's where you're gonna feel your machine braking right away with very little air pressure in that chamber. But as you keep riding the brake pedal to bring your machine to a full stop and you're not using your transmission and your engine brake to slow you down, that means you're gonna step on the brake pedal a little bit harder as you keep slowing down. And as you step on the brake pedal harder, you put more air into that chamber. And then by the time you come to your full stop, you've pulled a lot of rod out of your chamber if you're to come to your full stop. Yeah. So on a well-adjusted brake, right here is where you'll feel your machine immediately start to slow down. And then it'll just keep slowing down from there. And very little push rods come out of the chamber. Adjusted incorrectly. So here you can see the driver has stepped on the brake pedal, but he didn't really feel his machine slowing down. So he stepped a little bit harder and then he felt it slowing down. Yeah. So that lets you know that your brakes are out of adjustment. Because normally when I stop, I'm only using 10 to 15 pounds of brake application. As my day carries on and it's coming 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't made a brake adjustment, I notice as I'm stopping for red lights and stop signs, my air pressure values have been coming up by 5 or 10 pounds. That means my brakes are going out of adjustment and I should be adjusting. Again, so with your brakes out of adjustment, you don't feel your machine actually, you will feel it braking through the seat of your pants, but it's not giving you the power you need until you start throwing more air into that chamber. But when you throw more air into that chamber, more push rod comes out. Yeah. And once you pull all the rod out of that chamber and you haven't come to your full stop yet, you're gonna have to throw an anchor up your window there to bring yourself to a full stop. Yeah. Or just pull out on your spring brakes. I try not to use my spring brakes unless I absolutely have to come to a full stop.
So if you're pulling in different trailers like every couple of days or whatever, and the brakes on them aren't adjusted equally to your truck, what would happen there?
Well, your truck would be doing the braking, the power front of the braking, yeah.
Basically,
Yeah. What good drivers do is when they hook up to trailers, if they're pulling multiple trailers throughout the day, they're supposed to pre-trip that trailer every time they hook up to a new trailer. Yeah, they're supposed to do a walk around, check to make sure their brakes are within adjustment, right? And some drivers don't do that. They just pin up to the trailer, crank up their dolly legs, right, and pull it out of the yard. They didn't even inspect the trailer. And then when the light turns red and they find themselves stepping on the brake pedal a little bit more harder than they normally did, and that's when they usually realize it. Geez, maybe these trailer brakes are right out of adjustment. Yeah, because I don't know who pulled this trailer before me. Yeah, could have had 10 drivers pulling that trailer before you hooked up to it. Yeah. So that's why every time I'm dispatched, when I was in general freight and I wasn't in the gravel business, because in the gravel business you're always pulling the same trailer. You're not switching trailer to trailer, right? Unless your trailer broke down. But when you're in general freight and you are hooking up to multiple trailers throughout the day, after I pinned up to my trailer and put air to it, I do a walk around on that trailer. Make sure it was good to go. Yeah, it was legal, right? All the documentation was up to date on it. All the brakes were adjusted, no flat tires, no wheel security issues. All the lights are working. I open up the barn doors in the back and see if it's empty or loaded. And if it's loaded, I make sure the load's secure before I pull it out of the yard. I might be there an extra 15 minutes longer than the driver didn't do that. You know what? When I roll out of that yard and I pull onto the Anthony Henday and I see the DOT doing roadside inspections, I'm not sweating things now. Yeah. I'm not worrying about it because I did check out my trailer. That's when guys don't do their job description, that's when they get in trouble. Yeah, especially when you're dealing with the authorities. Adjusting incorrectly on a hot drum. Cast iron drums expand when heated, or requiring more push rod to stroke out further, right? To bring your machine to slowing down in a full stop. Eventually the chamber can bottom out. The push rod can bottom out in the chamber. This creates a total loss of brakes and a runaway. So here in this example, here the driver is initially stepping on the brake pedal right here, but he doesn't feel nothing happen. The brakes are applying, but he doesn't feel his machine really braking. So now he steps on the brake pedal harder. More push rod comes out of the chamber. Now he's feeling his machine braking, but it's not giving him that braking power he needs. So finally, to come to his full stop, he's putting about 40 or 50 pounds of air in that chamber. But look how much push rod came out of it. So you don't want to lose your reserve stroke. There's only so much rod that can come out of that chamber, and if you pull it all out, and you haven't come to a full stop yet, you're going to have to use a snowbank or a power pole to bring yourself to a stop. And I've done that. Oh yeah. Because when you cage your brakes, if you cage all 4 brakes on your tractor, you won't have any brakes. You'll just have your steer axle brakes, and they don't always stop you the way you want them to, right? So sometimes I've had to use snowbanks to bring myself to a stop. Yeah. It's not a big deal. You'll learn little tricks like that out of the bush. When you're doing a brake adjustment, half the time you're doing it in a puddle-soaked gravel yard, right? Or some urine-stained roadside turnout on Highway 43 or 63, right? Yeah, so now you're lying underneath your equipment, cold, wet, dripping trailer, checking out your brakes, right? Very rarely do we get the opportunity to roll our tractor trailers into a nice warm shop in a dry concrete floor, like I used to have that opportunity, not now, not today anyway. But yeah, so at the time you're doing your brake adjustments outside. So what you want to do is find nice flat ground, preferably dry if possible, and then get out and adjust your brakes. See, back in the old days, you used to dive underneath our equipment with a set of hand tools and adjust these old school slack adjusters. You guys nowadays, get to adjust your brakes from the comfort of your cab. Yeah, you don't even have to get out to adjust your brakes. All you guys have to do is step on the brake pedal, and these brakes will adjust themselves. You just got to make sure you got over 100 pounds of air in your tanks before you do it. Yeah, and we're getting into that in a few minutes here. There's 2 ways of checking push rod travel. There's the trucker's way, the 3-stroke method check, right? Where you can just grab a pry bar and make sure your brakes are released. Both these valves are in, because you won't be able to pry out on the push rod if your brakes are on. Just grab a pry bar and do a little bit of a tug. Should be less than 3/4 of an inch of rod pulling out of that chamber. See this little red plastic disc right there? That's a stroke indicator. That's a driver's aid. You can buy those at any truck stop for a couple bucks, 4 in the bag. They have a split in them, so that when you come out, they just slip right over the push rod, and then you butt them up against the face of your chamber. So that when your push rod strokes out, that's what you guys are measuring. The distance between that plastic ring and the face of your chamber. That's push rod travel. And that's what the big truck cops are measuring too. Yeah, when they're underneath your machine, checking to see if your brakes are within adjustment. So on a hand pull, you're only allowed 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of push rod travel on a hand pull with a pry bar. I can actually grab it with my hands like this too. And do a hand pull that way, but it's nicer if you got a pry bar. So now, that's not the way that brake was designed to work with a pry bar. It's designed to work with air pressure. So when you want to put air in this chamber and make it stroke out the way it was supposed to work, that's the way the big truck cops measure your push rod travel. You don't dive underneath your machine with a pry bar and come to every brake chamber and do this. You won't see a big truck cop doing that. If you're still sitting in your driver's seat, you know what happens at a level 1 inspection? When you get pulled over at the scales or on the Anthony Henday for a roadside inspection at a level 1, they're going to ask you, after they ask for all your documentation, you're going to be tackled by 2 cops. One cop is going to stand outside your driver's door with his coveralls on and a walkie-talkie and a hard hat and probably safety glasses. He's going to be talking to you. He's going to say, driver, show me all your documentation. So you're going to be digging through the cab, bringing up all your documentation to show him, right? His partner, you're going to see him standing in front of your truck, in front of the grill of your tractor or your tractor. Yeah. And when they're ready, you're going to see him disappear underneath your front bumper. He's going to have a creeper, right? A tool belt, a hands-free flashlight, a skid lid, a pair of safety glasses, and a walkie-talkie clipped to his coveralls. Yeah? And he's going to talk to the guy who's standing outside your driver's door. And the guy who's standing outside your driver's door, he's going to look at you and he's just going to ask you, driver, do you remember how to do an air system check? And if you give him that, no, Then they're gonna ask you to exit your seat, go stand at the end of your trailer, and now they're gonna treat you like an unprofessional. They'll think you don't know your job description, you're just a steering wheel attendant. So, yeah, just go stand over there, enjoy your smoke. We're gonna check out your machine. And that's the last thing you guys want, is having a cop sitting in your driver's seat, right? Because cops are human. He may not have a halo around his head. He might be a bad cop, and he could give you a ticket for something that works perfectly fine. And if you're not the wiser, guess what? You just bought that ticket because you didn't know. Yeah. But what happens is, once that guy dives underneath your machine, if you're still sitting in your driver's seat, 20 minutes later, you're gonna look in your driver's mirror and you're gonna see that guy come out the back bumper of your trailer. That whole 20 minutes he was underneath your machine, he was checking things out. He was checking your frame, your suspension, your braking system, everything, right? As he comes to each axle and each slack adjuster or brake chamber, he's gonna get on the radio and he's gonna say brake. And the guy who's standing outside your door, he's gonna say driver step on the brake pedal. You're gonna step on the brake pedal, right? And the guy who's laying it underneath your machine, he's gonna measure push rod travel to see how much push rod comes out of the chamber. And on a service brake application, not a pry bar application, on a service brake application, you're allowed maximum 2 inches of push rod coming out of that chamber. You don't wanna see 2 inches, you wanna see about 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches. And if they see that, he knows that brake is with an adjustment. He actually has a measuring tool under there. Yeah, he'll measure to see just how much rod's coming out of the chamber. And 2 inches isn't very much. That's 2 inches. Yeah. And if they're stroking out more than 2 inches, there's your ticket. He makes a note of it, and then you're gonna get a ticket for that. And then he moves over to the next axle, and you step on the brake pedal again. And then you measure push rod stroke on the next set of brakes, and so on and so on and so on, until it gets to the back of your trailer. That's how they check you out, you guys. Oh yeah, I know, I've been through lots of them. Lots of them, and I always pass with flying colors, because I don't let myself get into that situation. I go out of my way to make sure my machine is fit for travel. Because the last thing I want to do is be giving my hard-earned money to Rachel Notley. Because she is such a queen bee. Yeah? So that's why I'm always good to go. I may be the slow poke on the fleet. Yeah, don't worry about Grandpa Bill. He'll catch up later on. But at least I don't end up coming back to the yard with a whole bunch of tickets stuffed in my pocket. Yeah, and then have to deal with my supervisor. Yeah. Well, this is what happened to me today. So be careful out there, you guys. So the free stroke method check, the truck drivers check, that's a very rudimentary way of checking to see if your brakes are with an adjustment. The best way to do it is actually put air into that chamber the way they're designed to work and see what you have for a brake adjustment that way. I very rarely get to bring a girlfriend along with me on my drive, right? Because it's usually against company policy to have a passenger in a commercial vehicle. So I'm always by myself most of the time. And people ask me, well, how do you check your brakes? That's real easy, you guys. If I need to check my trailer brakes with my machine full of air and my red valve in, right? All I do is, before I get out of my driver's seat, is I apply a little bit of trailer brake. Yeah. And then I just go back to my trailer, and with my flashlight, I just shine it right on the push rod. See how much actually rod came out of the chamber. I've been looking at push rods so long, I know exactly what 2 inches looks like. Yeah, on the ruler. 2 inches on my finger on the ruler is from the tip of my finger to my second knuckle. That's 2 inches exactly on a ruler. So I mean, I can even hold my finger up to it like that, right? Or I know what 2 inches of stroke looks like. So I just shine my flashlight, yeah, that's good. Move over to the next axle, yeah, that's good, right? If I'm by myself, if I gotta check push rod travel on my tractor brakes, what I'll do is I'll just break a branch off a tree, or you know those locking clubs for your steering wheels for anti-theft? I have one of those. I just open it up, I wedge the brake pedal down, and stick the top end of that locking club underneath my instrument panel, and I make a brake application, and I measure push rod travel on my service brakes to my tractor brakes. That's how easy it is to check, you guys, when you're by yourself. It only takes a few minutes, and it's done. And then you have that peace of mind, and you're not rolling down the road all morning long with that, ah man, I should have checked that, oh, why didn't I check that? You know, that big question mark in the back of your mind. Yeah. So this is the applied stroke method. The way these chambers are meant to work. You put air into the chamber so that it strokes out and apply. You know, doing a hand pull This is a rudimentary way of checking, but I don't check my brakes that way either. I do it just the way the big truck cops do. I put air into that chamber if I gotta hold the brake pedal down. Now, if I got my girlfriend with me, I get her to step on the brake pedal, and then I'll walk around my machine and check push rod travel that way. So if you got your wife or your kids with you, and if they're cool to jump in the company truck with you, that's where you get that extra help to check to make sure your brakes are within adjustment. Now, when my brakes are stroked out and applied, like you see here, I guess I need some more air. Another way I can tell to see if my brakes are within adjustment is slack adjuster positioning. This black silhouetted line back here, that represents this slack adjuster in the released position. When you're shining your flashlight on a side profile view of that axle and those brake chambers, push rods, and slack adjusters, this is what they should look like in the released position. They should be angled in towards the chamber a little bit. Now, if you get your girlfriend to step on the brake pedal, or your husband, and you're pointing your flashlight at your slack adjusters, this is what you would see on a well-adjusted brake. The push rod would stroke out the slack adjuster would swivel and come just short of the 90-degree fulcrum. And then you know that brake is adjusted well enough to run down the road with. If your girlfriend or your husband or wife steps on the brake pedal and your push rod strokes out your slack adjuster and it goes past the 90-degree fulcrum, then that brake is out of adjustment. That's just too much push rod coming out of the chamber. And you need to tighten it up. So this is what it should look like on a well-adjusted brake. Released, applied. It should come just short of the 90-degree fulcrum, and then your brake should be giving you full power. So released, applied. Released, applied. If you're seeing this, released, applied, yeah, that brake's out of whack. This graph here, fellas and gals, this shows you your maximum push rod travel on the size of your brake chamber. So 20 and 24-inch brake chambers, like your steer axle chambers, maximum push rod travel is 1 3/4 inch. Any more travel than that, and you'll have to make a brake adjustment. Your 30-inch brake chambers, 30-inch normal, regular ones, 2-inch of push rod travel. The 30 LS, up to 2.5 inches of push rod travel, and you're still legal without getting a ticket. The manufacturers to these brake chambers have been building driving aids to help us drivers keep our brakes within adjustment. Some of the manufacturers of these brake chambers have been putting color-coded bands on the threaded rod. Right? It's a color-coded band so that when you put air into this chamber and the push rod strokes out, if you see the white band only exposing itself out of the chamber, like that, then you know that brake is still within adjustment. But if the red band exposes and shows itself and comes out of the chamber, it's letting you drivers know that, hey, that brake is out of adjustment and I need to set it up. Look at on this manufacturer here. This manufacturer bolted a bracket on the brake chamber with 2 posts on it. And then on the slack adjuster body, they put another indicator on there. So now when you step on the brake pedal, if the indicator goes past the last post, your brakes are out of adjustment. If the indicator's staying in between the 2 posts, that brake is still adjusted properly. So see how the industry is kind of helping drivers stay safe out there? Yeah. Before we get into this show, I'll get you guys to come up here. I'm going to give you a demo here. All right, back in my day, when I first got into this industry, we actually had to set up our brakes with a hand tool. Yeah, you couldn't set them up with a brake pedal. So this is what we used to do. We used to find flat ground, right? Tanks full of air. You can leave your engine running, but make sure you block your wheels because you know what? You got to release your brakes to make a brake adjustment. Both valves have got to be in. If you're lying underneath your machine and you're not on flat ground and you don't have your wheel blocks, your machine is going to roll over top of you. So a lot of guys weren't schooled properly, right? They were backing these brakes off thinking they were doing the right thing, just like that young kid from Viking, Alberta did back in 1986, right, and killed himself and 9 other people that day because he wasn't trained properly. He thought he was adjusting his brakes, but he backed them all off, and he died that day as a result of that accident. Yeah, it was a mistake. We used to grab, usually a 9/16 combination wrench, usually a pair of channel lock or vice grip pliers, and then dive underneath your machine and do your brake adjustments. These old school ones, they had the locking collar on them. Old school, new school. You can tell the old ones because they have the pop-up locking collar on them like that. Yeah, the new ones don't. And the adjustment bolt was a larger bolt than the newer ones. That's 9/16, that's 7/16, right? So 14 and 12. This was very grievous because in the wintertime, these things actually froze in the locked position, and then it was just such a bugger to get it to go down so you could put your wrench on it. And then once you pressed it down, it was a bugger to get it to pop back up and lock your adjustment into place. See, when you put your tool on there and made your adjustment, if you didn't make that collar pop back up and lock your adjustment into place, the first time you stepped on the brake pedal, your brakes are right out of whack again. So now you just realize that you just wasted 15 minutes of your day underneath your trailer and your tractor trying to set up your brakes, but because you couldn't get the collar pop back up, you went right out of adjustment again. So that was a grievous thing for some drivers, yeah. It's just like, man, this sucks. Like, why do I have to adjust brakes? I'm just paid to drive this thing, not operate or work on it, right? But that's what you guys have to do. So that was very grievous. And a lot of times as winter rolled in, the shop mechanics weren't pumping winter grease into these things too. So now, these things are frozen solid because they got summer grease in them, high temperature grease, right? Don't work well in low temperatures, yeah. So that was an issue. Now these new ones, they don't have the pop-up locking collar on. And you'll use a smaller hand tool if you need to put a tool on. But these new ones aren't designed to be set up with a hand tool. They're designed to be adjusted with air pressure values alone. And if they're not adjusting with air pressure values, then that's when you can put a hand tool on. So right now, I can see that this brake is not too badly out of adjustment. I pry out on it, and I only see about 3/4 to 1/2 inch of push rod travel coming out of that chamber. Now I'm going to back this brake right off. You got to press the collar down at the same time to turn your wrench. So that was a bit of an issue for some people. Now, as I'm backing it off, you can see this gap in between my drum and my liners is starting to open up. So that's one indicator I'm going the wrong way. And I need to start turning the other way. But I'm just going to show you what making a mistake will do. Here's your second indicator that you're turning that adjustment bolt the wrong way. Look at that. Now I'm pulling the rod out of the chamber. Not good. If you're doing that and you see that happening, stop turning with your wrench and turn the other way and get the rod to go back into the chamber. Because right now, as I keep turning this and pull all the rod out of the chamber, I just put that brake out of service. There's no way I'm going to bring that wheel and tire to a stop because I took this brake right out of adjustment. So now I want to make sure the push rod goes back into the chamber. Here's where a socket and ratchet kind of looks nice. It just goes there, right? So now I know I'm going the right way because the rod is going back into the chamber. So I'm going to keep turning this adjustment bolt until my wrench doesn't turn anymore, until I just can't turn it. I'm going to tighten it right up. You can hear it getting tight, and now my liners are starting to make contact to the inside of the drum. Yeah, we're almost there. There we go. So now my brake is fully applied. I can't even pull any rod out of the chamber. Very little anyway. So here's where you look at this adjustment bolt like the face of a clock or the 4 cardinal points of a compass. We'll stick with the face of a clock. So you're looking at that adjustment bolt like the 12, 9, 6, and 3 o'clock position. I'm going to make a 1/2 turn adjustment. Some drivers only make a 1/4 turn adjustment. They'll go from the 3 o'clock to the 12 o'clock position for a nice tight brake. Some drivers don't like their brakes that tight, so they'll make a half turn adjustment. And I'll make a half turn adjustment. So I'll just set my wrench at the 3 o'clock position, and I'll bring it back to the 9 o'clock position. Make sure the collar pops back up, and now, a well-adjusted brake. And I don't have to pry on this thing like I'm, lifting 10 tons up. Just a gentle pry like that, and then you got a well-adjusted brake. That's how you do it. That's how we used to do it back in the day, right? But now, we're all spoiled. We get to do our brake adjustments right from the comfort of our nice warm cab. The only thing I have to do now is after I made my brake adjustment, is get out of my vehicle and check with my eyes if my brakes did adjust themselves. No hand tools required. So that's how that works. I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Chris.
Chris? Come on up here, Chris. Back that brake off and tighten it up.
So,
Yeah, just put your wrench on there. You gotta press the collar down at the same time. Yeah. So now, did you wanna back that brake off so you can see what a badly adjusted brake is? Turn it to the left, towards your body there, yeah. Give it about 5 or 6 turns.
yeah.
And that should do. All right, now you can either use your hand and pull back on that, or you can use your pry bar.
So just do it up there like this?
Yeah, yeah. Now look at that. Wait, so that's what you're measuring in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now, that brake is out of adjustment. That's a little bit more than 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch push rod travel, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, tighten it up now. Turn to the right. As you're tightening it up, you're gonna bring this wheel and tire to a stop here right away.
I can see it.
Yeah, so now you can see your liner is gonna make contact with the inside of your drum, right? I can feel it getting tight already. There we go. Yeah.
So now,
So now,
I
make a
don't
half
want it
turn
as tight,
adjustment. Yeah.
just bring it this way.
You got it. Grab your pry bar. See if you can bring this wheel and tire to a stop. Hang on, I had to reset my hand. Okay. Go ahead, slide your, now I'll let you know. Brake. See, look at that. Very little push rod travel there. See, that's what you're measuring right in there, that gap.
Yep.
And your brake is fully applied. So that brake is within adjustment. Right on. Your name, ma'am?
Money.
Money? Money?
Yeah.
Oh, hell of a name. Are you single? Go ahead and back that off, Money. Yeah, put your wrench on there. Yeah, now press down on this collar at the same time, Money. I know it's a bit of a two-hand operation there. Yeah. Yeah. So now, you're gonna go to the left. So here, I'll just set it for you up here.
Oh,
Just
from
do
the
this.
right.
Yeah. There, now turn your wrench. Yeah. There you go. And then you put it back on again. And you have to
I
press
do
it.
it.
Yeah, press the collar. Yeah. Do it about 5 times. I'd like to see you pull a little bit of rod out of the chamber. Now look at the big gap that you're creating in there, Money. As you keep turning that to the left, you're backing off your brakes. You're putting them out of adjustment. Yes. Well, you don't want to do that. Yeah. You don't want to put your brakes out of adjustment. You want to tighten them up. So now, try and make a brake application. Use your pry bar. Just slide it in between here, Money. Yeah. Look at that. Pry harder. Harder. Yeah, look at that. So look how much push rod's coming out of the chamber here, Money, and you still can't bring this wheel to a stop. So that brake is right out of whack. It's right out of adjustment. So now, turn it to the right, tighten it up. Yeah. Yeah, in the winter time when it's minus 20 or 30 below, that lock-in collar was an issue. I used to curse and swear at those things. I tell you. Yeah, so now, things are getting tight, right? This gap is starting to decrease. Pretty soon, you're gonna bring this wheel to a stop as I keep trying to turn. Yeah, I feel things getting tight. I can hear them. A couple more turns and you're there. Ah, now we're getting contact. Oh yeah. There we go. So now, brake is fully applied. Make a half turn adjustment. Oh, do you wanna try and pry? Yeah, sure. So very little rod coming out of the chamber, right? Very good. So now, make your half turn adjustment, Mike. That's it. And make sure the collar pops back up and locks your adjustment into place. It did, it popped up. Yeah. All right, try and make a breakout now. Yep, use your pry bar. No, use your pry bar. Harder. A little harder. There we go. And what you're measuring right in here is that gap right there, Minnie.
Yeah.
That should be 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on a pry bar check or free stroke method check. Yeah. That's how some truck drivers check their brakes. I don't check my brakes that way. I don't use a pry bar. I put air into the chamber. So in other words, I step on the brake pad and I check it that way. What's your name, sir?
Kyle.
Kyle, come on up, Kyle. Back this brake off, set it up again. Get you out of your seat there. Get some blood back in your leg. Yeah, I know. Well, go ahead, back that off, Kyle. Yeah. So keep turning it. Now you're gonna see this gap increase, yeah? Because you're backing off that brake. And as you keep turning to the left, pretty soon you're gonna start pulling push rod out of that chamber. That's letting you know that you're going the wrong way. Oh yeah. So now, stop. Try and make a brake application cut. Put your pry bar in there for it. Look at that. So you pulled that rod out, but nothing was happening. These weren't even moving. Yeah. All right, now tighten up. Yeah, pretty soon you're gonna bring this wheel to a stop. And tired. You're almost there. Aha. Keep going. There you go. Both brake is fully applied now. You will, if you try and pry out on your push rod, Kyle, it's not much. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, I think you should pry that. Oh, very little, eh? Yeah. So it's fully applied. Now make your half turn adjustment. Right on. And try and make a brake out now. And look at that, right away. And that's what you're measuring, the stroke right in there, Kyle. Yeah, right behind that indicator there. That should be about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on a handful. What's your name, sir?
Joey.
Joey, come on up, Joey. Yep. Back this off quickly, set it up. I'll fix this up. Yeah, just pull a little bit of rod out of the chamber. Okay, look what you're doing. Look at that big gap in the middle. There, now. Yeah, so now you know you're going the wrong way. So no matter how hard you pull out on that rod there, Joe, this is not going to apply your brakes. So now you're going to tighten them up. Yeah. And yeah, you're there. Brake is fully applied. He's going to make his half turn adjustment and try and make a brake gap, Joe. Look at that, right away. And nice short stroke in there, eh?
Yeah. No, that's what those little plastic things are for.
Yeah, that's a stroke indicator. Yeah.
I was told they're for dust.
You got told a lie.
Dan told me they're for dust.
What's your name, sir?
Dardy.
Darty?
Dardy.
Barty?
Yeah.
Oh, come on up, Barty. Yeah. Back this brake off, set it up again. Yeah. Make sure you push down on that locking collar, Barty. Yeah. That's it. There. Now the adjustment bolt turns. Yeah. So yeah, if you couldn't depress that in during the winter time, then you could